In the quiet rhythm of morning streets, small footsteps echo a deeper truth about a nation and its values. Backpacks bounce, train cards tap, and children move through the world not as burdens to be guarded, but as lives to be trusted. In Japan, childhood is not hidden behind walls of fear, but carried openly through public space, shaped by culture, law, and collective care. This story is not only about children going to school alone. It is about how a society decides who belongs in the streets, who deserves protection, and how trust is built slowly over generations. In Japan, childhood is not treated as a fragile phase to be shielded from the world, but as a respected stage of life deserving dignity, protection, and autonomy. From the post-war social reforms of the late 1940s to the present day, children have been viewed as a shared responsibility, not the private property of individual families. This belief is woven into daily life. A child walking alone is not seen as neglected, but as supported by the invisible net of society. Cultural norms attach deep social shame to harming, frightening, or even inconveniencing a child. Public space is morally understood to include children as rightful participants, not interruptions. Sidewalks, crossings, trains, and neighborhoods quietly bend to accommodate them, reinforcing the idea that children belong safely in the open world. This respect for youth autonomy is rooted in long-standing cultural philosophy rather than modern policy alone. Concepts such as omwayari, empathy toward others, and seiken, awareness of social eyes, create behavioral restraint in adults. A stranger does not ignore a lost child, yet does not hover either. Intervention is calm, corrective, and respectful. The child is treated as capable, not helpless. Over decades, especially during Japan's rapid urbanization between the 1950s and 1980s, this mindset allowed cities to grow without excluding children from daily movement. Childhood became something society carried together, reinforced by schools, neighborhoods, and shared expectations rather than fear-based supervision. In contrast, much of the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom frames childhood primarily as a private family responsibility. Since the late 20th century, rising fear culture, media amplification of rare dangers, and legal liability concerns have pushed children indoors and under constant adult supervision. Public spaces increasingly prioritize efficiency, speed, and adult convenience, making independent child movement appear risky or irresponsible. Parents are expected to protect through control rather than trust, and independence is often delayed. Where Japan builds safety through collective accountability, many Western societies rely on individual vigilance. The result is not a difference in love, but a difference in how trust, risk, and childhood itself are culturally defined. In Japan, school has never been designed as a place to hide children from the world, but as a structured bridge that prepares them to move confidently within it. Since the modernization of Japan's education system in the late 19th century, and especially after the 1947 Fundamental Law of Education, schools have carried the responsibility of shaping citizens, not just students. Daily commuting is treated as character education. Walking to school, navigating crossings, boarding buses or trains, and arriving on time are considered essential lessons in responsibility and self-management. Teachers coordinate routes, schedules, and expectations, but they do not escort. The journey itself becomes part of the curriculum, teaching children how to read time, follow rules, and coexist with strangers long before adulthood. Inside the school culture, independence is reinforced rather than softened. Students clean classrooms, serve lunches, organize activities, and take collective responsibility for shared spaces. These practices, normalized nationwide by the 1960s, mirror the logic of independent commuting. Children are trusted with real duties because trust teaches competence. When a child walks alone, it is not abandonment, it is continuity. The school assumes the child has already learned how to move safely because society has prepared the environment to support that movement. By the time children enter elementary school, usually at age 6, independence is expected, structured, and normalized, not celebrated as exceptional or reckless. In the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom, schools have gradually evolved in the opposite direction. Especially from the 1980s onward, increased legal liability, traffic-heavy urban planning, and parental fear reshaped education into a protective enclosure. Supervision expanded, busing became standard, and independent commuting was quietly discouraged. Schools began absorbing responsibilities once shared with the wider community, turning safety into a controlled perimeter rather than a learned skill. Children arrive protected but less practiced. Where Japanese schools prepare students to navigate society, many Western systems prioritize risk elimination over resilience, making independence and aspiration postponed rather than a lesson taught. In Japan, parental trust is not accidental. It is trained slowly, reinforced quietly, and shared collectively. From the moment a child is born, parents are surrounded by signals that independence is not dangerous, but developmental. By the post-war decades of the 1950s and 1960s, as cities stabilized and public order strengthened, Japanese parenting culture absorbed a powerful message. Society will help you raise this child. Letting a child walk alone is not framed as neglect, but as confidence in the system. Parents rehearse routes with children, teach rules, observe from a distance, and then step back. Fear is not denied, but it is contained, balanced by shared norms that say the child will not walk alone in a moral sense, only in a physical one. This trust is reinforced through constant social feedback. Other parents do the same. Schools expect it. Neighbors recognize children by uniform and routine. When a parent releases a child onto the street, they are supported by invisible assurances built into daily life. The act of letting go becomes a rite of passage, not a moment of anxiety. By the early 2000s, this mindset was already deeply embedded, long before global media began questioning it. Independence is normalized early, usually between ages 6 and 7, not as an experiment, but as an expectation aligned with national values of responsibility, restraint, and social harmony. In the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom, parenting has increasingly been shaped by fear rather than trust. From the 1980s onward, sensational media coverage, rare but amplified crimes, and expanding legal liability transformed parental judgment into public scrutiny. Letting a child walk alone became a social risk, sometimes even a legal one. Parents are not reinforced by community norms, but judged by them. Anxiety becomes contagious. Where Japanese parents trust the system and release gradually, many Western parents feel isolated, pressured to supervise constantly, not because danger is constant, but because fear has become louder than trust. In Japan, the city itself participates in raising children. Urban planning after World War II, particularly from the 1950s through the 1970s, quietly rebuilt cities around human scale rather than speed. Narrow residential streets, clearly marked school zones, and pedestrian-first crossings became standard, not exceptional. Traffic behavior followed strict social rules. Drivers expect children, slow automatically, and obey signage with near-ritual consistency. Yellow hats, backpacks, and uniforms are not decorative. They are visual signals integrated into traffic psychology. Sidewalks are continuous, crossings are frequent, and routes to schools are mapped and rehearsed with care. The city does not test children, it adapts to them. This design philosophy extends beyond infrastructure into behavior. Crossing guards, often elderly volunteers, stand watch during peak hours, forming a visible bridge between generations. Signage is placed at child eye level. Convenience stores become informal safety nodes. From the 1980s onward, municipal governments formalized safe routes to school, reinforcing predictability rather than surveillance. Children learn to read the city as a language: when to stop, where to wait, how to flow. Predictability replaces danger. The city teaches through repetition, not warnings. Over time, children internalize spatial confidence, and parents learn that the environment itself reduces risk long before intervention is needed. In much of the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom, cities tell a different story. Post-war expansion prioritized cars, speed, and distance. Suburban sprawl fragmented daily life, separating homes, schools, and shops by highways rather than sidewalks. Sidewalks disappear, crossings stretch wide, and traffic patterns change unpredictably. Children are not expected. They are accommodated only temporarily. School zones exist, but often as exceptions within car-dominated landscapes. Independence becomes risky not because children are incapable, but because cities were never built with them in mind. Where Japan bends the city toward the child, many Western cities ask the child to survive the city. In Japan, public transport is not merely a system of movement. It is an extension of education. From as early as 6 or 7 years old, children step onto buses and trains as part of daily life, especially after the rapid expansion of urban rail networks in the 1960s and 1970s. They learn where to stand, how to queue, when to bow slightly, and how to occupy space without disturbing others. Silence is not enforced, but modeled. Order is not demanded, but expected. These unwritten rules transform trains into classrooms without walls, where social awareness, patience, and responsibility are learned through repetition. Children are not treated as burdens. They are treated as participants. What makes this system work is not the absence of risk, but the presence of collective attention. Adults intervene calmly when needed, guiding a child who missed a stop, correcting unsafe behavior, or offering reassurance without drama. This intervention culture is rooted in post-war civic ethics, reinforced through public campaigns and shared memory rather than constant enforcement. From the 1980s onward, railway companies introduced clear announcements, uniformed staff, and predictable schedules that reduced confusion for young riders. Children learn to trust the rhythm of the system, and the system quietly trusts them in return. The result is not fearlessness, but competence shaped by routine. In contrast, public transport in much of the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom carries a different emotional weight. While children do use buses and trains, the environments are often louder, less predictable, and less socially cohesive. Adults are more hesitant to intervene, constrained by privacy norms or fear of misinterpretation. Public space becomes anonymous rather than communal. The perceived risk rises not only from crime statistics, but from the absence of shared responsibility. Where Japanese transport teaches children how to belong, many Western systems teach children how to stay guarded. Independence exists, but it is fragile, supported less by culture and more by caution. In Japan, technology did not arrive to replace trust, but to quietly reinforce it. Beginning in the early 2000s, as IC card systems like Suica and Pasmo were introduced across major cities such as Tokyo and Osaka, children became natural participants in a seamless safety network. These cards log entry and exit times on trains and buses, allowing parents to confirm movement without constant contact. By the 2010s, GPS-enabled school bags and simple tracking devices became common, especially for younger children. Importantly, these tools are designed to inform, not intrude. They operate silently in the background, supporting independence rather than interrupting it. Technology here behaves like a shadow, present, reliable, and respectful of space. CCTV systems further reflect this philosophy. Japan expanded public camera coverage gradually from the late 1990s through the 2010s, but always alongside strict privacy protections. Footage access is regulated, retention periods are limited, and misuse carries legal consequences. Cameras exist to deter harm, not to monitor behavior. Emergency response systems follow the same logic. School routes are mapped, local police Koban stations remain visible and approachable, and emergency call buttons near crossings and stations provide immediate support. Children are taught how to use these systems calmly and correctly, reinforcing confidence rather than fear. The result is a technological ecosystem that supports autonomy while preserving dignity. In contrast, many parts of the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom struggle to strike this balance. Some regions rely on heavy surveillance, constant GPS tracking, camera saturation, and direct monitoring, creating privacy anxiety for both parents and children. Others lack integration altogether, with fragmented transport systems and limited coordination between schools, transit authorities, and local safety services. Technology often arrives as a reaction to fear rather than a reinforcement of trust. Japan's approach reveals a different lesson. Safety is strongest not when children are watched constantly, but when systems are aligned, restrained, and built to quietly step back once confidence takes hold. In Japan, the protection of children is not left to custom alone. It is written clearly into law and reinforced through consequence. Modern child protection frameworks took stronger shape after World War II, particularly with the Child Welfare Act of 1947, which established the state's responsibility to safeguard children's physical and emotional well-being. Over the decades, this framework expanded, responding to social change and emerging risks. By the 1990s and early 2000s, revisions strengthened mandatory reporting requirements for teachers, healthcare workers, and community officials, ensuring that early signs of harm could not be ignored. Penalties for child abuse, neglect, and endangerment were clarified and increased, sending a public message that harm to children carries both moral and legal weight. What makes Japan's legal system distinctive is not only severity, but coherence. National safety standards guide everything from school zone speed limits to public transport conduct, creating consistency across prefectures. Laws regulating urban planning, traffic behavior, and public surveillance intersect deliberately with child protection statutes. This means a child walking alone is not protected by one law, but by a network of aligned rules operating quietly together. Enforcement is supported by visible institutions such as local police Koban stations, which act as community guardians rather than distant authorities. By the 2010s, these combined systems allowed independence to exist within clearly defined legal boundaries, where freedom is supported rather than exposed. In the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom, child protection laws exist, but their impact is often uneven. Enforcement varies by region, penalties differ widely, and responsibility is frequently divided across multiple agencies with limited coordination. In some areas, fear of liability leads to over-supervision, while in others gaps in enforcement leave families uncertain about boundaries. The result is inconsistency rather than confidence. Japan's model demonstrates that independence for children is not a cultural accident. It is the outcome of laws that are clear, enforced, and socially reinforced, creating a stable foundation where trust can safely grow. In Japan, child safety extends beyond laws and infrastructure into a quiet, unspoken social contract. This contract has deep roots in post-war community rebuilding during the 1950s, when neighborhoods functioned as interdependent units rather than isolated households. Shop owners noticed the rhythm of school mornings. Elderly neighbors recognized familiar uniforms, and commuters on the same route learned the silent choreography of children moving through shared space. This vigilance is not intrusive nor announced. It is observational, respectful, and constant. A child who hesitates at a crossing or drops a bag is met with calm assistance, not suspicion. Intervention is viewed as duty, not overreach, shaped by long-standing cultural values of collective responsibility and harmony. This watchfulness is reinforced by social expectations rather than formal authority. In Japan, failing to help a child in visible need carries quiet social shame, while stepping in appropriately is seen as normal citizenship. By the 1980s and 1990s, as cities grew denser and populations aged, this role of the community became even more pronounced. Elderly residents, often present during school commute hours, became informal guardians of daily routes. Children learn early that they are seen, not monitored, supported without being followed. This balance allows independence to develop within a net of human awareness that activates only when necessary, preserving dignity on both sides. In the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom, the instinct to intervene often collides with hesitation. Adults may fear misinterpretation, accusations, or legal consequences for interacting with an unfamiliar child. Public life is more fragmented and community familiarity less assumed. While goodwill exists, uncertainty frequently overrides action. This contrast highlights why Japan's system functions so smoothly. Community vigilance there is not enforced by fear or authority, but sustained by shared norms that define care as responsibility. In such an environment, children move freely not because no one is watching, but because everyone quietly is. In Japan, childhood independence is never issued as an instruction or forced as a milestone. It emerges slowly as the natural outcome of systems working in alignment over time. Since the post-war Reconstruction era of the 1950s, Japan has layered culture, law, infrastructure, education, and technology around a single assumption: children belong safely in public life. By the time a child walks alone, boards a train, or navigates a crossing, That moment is supported by decades of intentional design. Schools prepare children gradually, cities anticipate their movement, laws protect them decisively, and communities watch without hovering. Independence appears not as bravery, but as normalcy, because the environment has been calibrated to make autonomy reasonable rather than risky. This alignment is why independence in Japan feels calm rather than dramatic. Trust flows in all directions. Parents trust schools and cities, children trust routines and adults, and institutions trust citizens to uphold shared responsibility. This trust did not appear overnight. It was reinforced through consistent policy, low violent crime rates since the 1970s, and visible consequences for those who break social or legal rules. Over time, independence became an outcome of predictability. Children are not told to be fearless. They are shown that the world around them behaves in expected ways. When systems behave reliably, courage is no longer required for ordinary movement. In the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom, attempts to replicate Japanese independence often fail because the surrounding systems are not aligned. Encouraging children to walk alone without safe infrastructure, cultural consensus, or legal clarity transfers risk to families instead of reducing it. Independence cannot be legislated in isolation, nor taught through slogans. Where cities prioritize cars, communities hesitate to intervene, and laws vary widely. Autonomy becomes a gamble rather than a guarantee. Japan's lesson is not that children should be independent, but that independence must be earned collectively. When trust, design, culture, and law move together, independence stops being a rule and becomes a natural result. What we have explored is not simply a story about children walking to school alone. It is a story about systems that work quietly together. In Japan, childhood independence is not built on bravery or risk, but on respect, design, trust, and responsibility layered carefully over decades. From laws that protect without ambiguity, to cities shaped for small feet, to technology that supports without intruding, and communities that watch without judging, every element reinforces the same message. Children matter, and public space belongs to them too. Independence emerges not because children are pushed, but because the world around them has been made safe enough to allow it. By contrast, in much of the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom, childhood independence struggles because systems are fragmented. Fear replaces trust, supervision replaces preparation, and responsibility is isolated within families instead of shared by society. The Japanese example reminds us that independence cannot be copied as behavior alone. It must be grown patiently through alignment. At AsiaEyewithin, we explore these quiet systems that shape everyday life in powerful ways. If this story deepened your understanding, challenged your assumptions, or opened a new perspective, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others. Your support helps us continue uncovering the hidden structures behind how societies truly work. Until next time, keep looking inward and outward with AsiaEyewithin.